Just want to wish all of our veterans a very memorable Veterans Day 2024. I wish you all the greatest health and happiness and well-being that is possible for you. And thank you from the bottom of my heart for all of your sacrifices. Have a great day. Bye. Good morning. I am kind of re-reviewing in preparation for I believe it's a fourth hearing on one case. We started pre-COVID and it went all the way to multiple hearings and then a denial by the ALJ, which we appealed to the Appeals Council, and the Appeals Council found in my client's favor. And so what that generally means, like the vast majority of the time, if they find in your favor, is that it's going to be remanded. Okay, so I'm just going to go over the language that you can expect to see, and then I'll also go over the major basis why they said this has to go back and be redone by the judge. So the language says this. It's kind of a quick paragraph. The administrative law judge issued a decision on August 5th, 2023. The claimant has asked the Appeals Council to review this decision. The Appeals Council grants the request for review under the substantial evidence provision of the Social Security Administration Regulations 20 CFR 416.1470. Under the authority of 20 CFR 416.1477. And by the way, this is an SSI case. The Appeals Council vacates the hearing decision, and remands this case to an administrative law judge for resolution of the following issues. Okay, so now the following issues, which is one major one. Here, the Appeals Council found that the ALJ did not adequately consider the evidence from the consultative examiner, the state's consultative examiner. That was, months before the hearing, in assessing the claimant's maximum residual functional capacity. The Appeals Council goes on to say that the ALJ will articulate, when it goes back to the ALJ on remand, the ALJ will articulate the persuasiveness of all the medical opinions in prior administrative findings in the case record, including an explanation of how the ALJ considered the factors of supportability and consistency as per 416.920C, if the residual functional capacity assessment conflicts with an opinion from a medical source, so you can have many medical sources. If there is a conflict between what the judge decides is the RFC and what one of your medical sources has described, the ALJ must explain why the opinion was not adopted. And that's under Social Security ruling 96-8P. That's not a new ruling at all. That's the one that would be implicated here. The hearing decision does not adequately address the opinion of the consultative examiner, Dr. So-and-so, which opined, among other limitations, the use of a cane is medically necessary, and the claimant requires the use of a cane to ambulate, but also notes for balance and never to be exposed to bright lights, blah, blah, blah. Okay, that's an interesting point about the cane, that we probably put that in our appeal. I have found that there is often a big difference, if the cane is only needed for ambulating, meaning walking, and not for balance generally, which would mean it is needed even for standing. So that is what the AC says was not well articulated. And if I recall, the ALJ did not find a cane to be necessary and didn't use it when asking the vocational expert hypothetical questions. So glad to see here that the Appeals Council is driving that point home. So as we go back to this hearing, and it's ironically, this seemed to have been what would have been a win back in 2020, as per the verbiage from the ALJ himself at the hearing. But then COVID hit like a month later. They were delaying to see where that onsite might be further back. potentially. And next thing you know, we're up for another hearing. And I was like, what? It was really terrible for my client. Anyway, so and then we go to another hearing, and then another hearing, and then the ALJ denies. Makes zero sense. I would also add that there's an age change in the middle of this whole thing. So the person hit 50 probably a couple of years ago now. And on that basis, that's where it's really critical, the difference between being found to be able to do light RFC, the exertional level of light, versus if you're restricted to sedentary. And because if found sedentary, and if there's no prior work that can be done, no transferability of skills, then the finding of disabled is pretty much mandated. And yeah, it almost seemed like it was purposely designed to avoid that. And it's a definite sitting standing case. It has to do with lower extremities in particular. So anyway, that's how they kind of verbalize it, guys. Yeah. So we'll be heading back. Pretty much the same evidence, because it's all just kind of continued in the same vein. This is not like an improving type of matter where you're going to get better. So we'll see. I hope we have a positive result for my person who has been really suffering under the anxiety and the mental strain of this still being out there. So my heart goes out to him, and hopefully this will be resolved in the next weeks. All right.
I guess.
Hey, so if the subject matter of the video you just listened to is of interest and you want more on it, stay tuned. Here's another one about the same topic, but a little bit different. Bye now. Good afternoon. I just popped out an appeal to the Appeals Council on a case that was denied after an ALJ hearing. And the point of this is to let you know, I mean, I did it just like that. When I say popped out, I mean popped out. Appealing to the Appeals Council is super, super, super easy and quick. It is not the same thing as appealing a denial on initial or on reconsideration, because you don't have to add any new treatment, any things that have happened since you were denied or before then, because the Appeals Council is only looking at what the judge said in the decision, and whether or not that judge met the minimum obligations of review and consideration, adjudication that he or she is required to do before rendering a decision. So none of that new stuff counts by and large. So generally speaking, you're not going to be adding new evidence. So that was the main point. So this video right now is not about whether you should be appealing to Appeals Council versus appealing anew or doing nothing. It is about, once you know you should be appealing for Appeals Council, and that's, oftentimes, but not always, then don't let fear of, a big burden of work cause you to not do the appeal. Okay, because it's super easy. It takes about 2 minutes. And what you're going to do is go to the same place where you would go as if you're applying. So it's like very, this thing is getting in my face. It's very out there in the public. Okay, this is not the way it used to be. We used to have to do everything on paper, fax it into a fax number that didn't work. So therefore, you would try to send it certified return receipt mail until the trip to the post office. Real pain in the rear. Now they have it online. So again, you're going to go to where you would go to file for disability. When you scroll down that page where you could click the apply, it gives you more options about if you are further along the process and you need to appeal. And it mentions the 4 different appeal stages. Pardon me, I got these allergies going on that are just killing my throat. And the lowest one is having an ALJ decision reviewed. And that is your Appeals Council review, because the Appeals Council is the entity that such an appeal would go to, right? So prior to that, you had appealed a reconsideration denial, and that was reviewed by the ALJ. Unfortunately, the ALJ held to the same decision as the reconsideration determination, and now you're asking for that to be reviewed by the Appeals Council. So when you go in there, you're just going to have to identify yourself, know the date that your denial letter by your judge is, You have to kind of self-identify, social security number, birthday, I think. And then when it says, why are you appealing, just say the judge erred factually and legally in making his decision or her decision. One sentence, that's it. If you don't even put that in there, it's probably not going to make a difference. The appeals counsel will be reviewing your situation and deciding whether or not there was legal error done. They're not generally going to usurp the judge's discretionary capacity to make certain findings, but they're going to make sure that he took all the steps needed and reviewed all the things he had to review. And if he didn't, and it would be something that would have potentially changed the outcome, they can remand it back to him. In rarer instances, there could be a complete reversal of the decision and then an award right off the bat. But generally speaking, you're going to, if you're fortunate enough to have them find that there was an error worthy of remand, you'll get the remand, which means you go back to another hearing. It's really easy. It takes like 2 minutes to get it. And you're going to get a confirmation that you did it. And you're going to save that, print it, take a screenshot with your, whatever you have to do to get a copy of that. You want to have proof that you did appeal it, because if you don't have proof that you appealed it within the 60-day time limit, you're most likely going to be denied the right to have an appeal heard because you did it out of time. So take that into consideration and don't blow off an appeals counsel appeal just because you're familiar with ones that are pretty burdensome on you and take some time. This one doesn't. Okay. You will have the option also in there of asking for an extension to get more time in. So they won't actually look at it until the extension is over, which is usually 25 days. You only need to do that if you think you're going to be submitting a brief, or if you think there's evidence that you might have a shot of getting them to consider. That's going to be rare. And I won't go into when that might be, but generally speaking, remember, it's about the old evidence that you had the opportunity to and did submit, not about things you forgot to submit, or things that came after the ALJ decision. Okay. But anyway, if you do want to look into submitting more evidence because you think you might have something that might be admissible, unlike most of it, then click the extension and then go find out. You have 60 days to make this appeal. You don't have to do it on day one. If you think you need time to get such evidence that you think you might have, or you do want to do a brief, what we do is we start that process right away, and we might wait on triggering the appeals counsel appeal till several weeks later, of course, never coming close to the deadline, only for the opportunity for some of this stuff to be gathered if it's not, or to determine if it's even possible. Or of course to do a brief, which we always do. So we generally do ask for the extension, and I also don't trigger the running of the extension on day 2 after the denial. Appeals counsel appeals aren't that common because, we don't like to get to this point, but they do happen. Rare, but they do happen. And you want to know that if it's best for you to be taking that chance on an appeals counsel because it's the best opportunity you have, don't let any fear of it being an arduous process thwart you, because you do not have to submit more evidence by and large, and you do not have to do a brief. The appeals counsel is going to consider what it considers. It's going to review the whole thing, regardless of whether you do a brief. So that's a good thing. All right. Hope this helps. Don't be afraid of an appeals counsel appeal. All right. Of the ALJ decision. Bye now.